the fight that he wants, the fight that makes a ton of sense for the White House card. I haven't been approached about it necessarily. We've had some conversations about it, but as Dana has said publicly, he's not going to make any decisions until January, February of next year.
Welcome back, everyone. This is Bando's Breakdown. It's good to be back after a 2-week hiatus. My name is Zain Bando. Thank you so much for joining me. As you all know, I'm a sports journalist and an ETV Network co-host for several different shows, including ETV Sports, this show, Forever Power 5, and the Football Forecast. So that's where you can catch me across the network. You can listen to Bando's Breakdowns wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, you can follow the show on social media at Bando's Breakdown. That's where all the clips live. Instagram, X, and TikTok as well would be very much appreciated. Stay tuned for a message later on in the show from our friends over at Playback as well to find out more about what they do for us overall as a network and just what they can do strategically on the sports watching front. For those of you who are watching this now, we just had Playback's big day, and I can say this now because it would make the most sense for when this is premiering. But Tony Reality was a part of Playback's big day, the former ESPN Around the Horn moderator and host of the show. So good to see him there as well. Tons of NBA action that took place Wednesday night on that stream. If you want to check it out, playback.tv/EDB Network. Speaking of ways to find us, you can subscribe on YouTube, youtube.com/EDB Network. We just surpassed 1,000 subscribers not too long ago. So again, it would be very much appreciated if you guys check this out over on the YouTube end as well. That's where all of our video content lives, and that's where you can watch this very show. Turn on post notifications. That way you don't miss another episode of Bando's Breakdowns or any other show across the network as well. It would be greatly appreciated if you guys checked us out over there, as that is where we are trying to build our biggest footprint in terms of watch hours, etc., as well. So just something to bear in mind there. But let's get started with what we're going to be talking about today as we get rid of this. Anyway, Sans overview, what we're going to be talking about. A lot of college football today, some NFL stuff as well, but it's going to be mainly focused on the college football and all the big games that are coming up this week in college football. It's week 12, which means the conference title races are getting closer and closer to fruition. We're getting closer and closer to knowing what those matchups may be about. We're also going to preview UFC 322, which features 2 title fights. We will recap UFC Vegas 111 and my absolutely horrid slate of predictions going 2-10 on that card. We're not going to try to have a repeat this Saturday from Madison Square Garden, but that's later on in the show. And then, of course, stay tuned for a major surprise. I teased it on my Instagram story the other day, but yes, in full, the Michael Chandler interview will drop at the very end of this episode. So episode 67 is a banger. You'll want to stay tuned for the end as well. Let's get into the show now because it is going to be an exciting one. So here we go. Recapping week 11 and previewing week 12 in college football. Can't believe we're already at week 12 in college football. It's unbelievable to say. Let's go over some of the major takeaways from this week in college football because it was a big week. But let's start, though, in the Big Ten. So we had a bunch of parity in the league this past week. Indiana defeated Penn State by 3 in-state college. That was 27-24 to maintain the number 2 ranking in the CFP poll. The new rankings officially came out Tuesday night, so that was good to see as well. That was a huge win for the Hoosiers. Last gasp effort to Omar Cooper Jr. kept his toe in bounds and delivered, if you will, stunned silence and deliverables, if you will, for the Hoosiers to stun the Penn State Nittany Lions on the road and do so in emphatic fashion. Indiana remains undefeated. Who else is undefeated in the league is Ohio State. As I've alluded to the last several weeks on this very program, Ohio State and Indiana very much look like Both teams are on a collision course to meet in the Big Ten Championship in Indianapolis, barring anything unforeseen. It seems to me like these are clearly the two best teams in the league, and I don't even think it's even close. Ohio State still remains the number one team in the country after beating Purdue, but failing to cover the spread. This week, Ohio State plays UCLA. Looking around the rest of the league, USC took care of business against Northwestern at home, um, used a major second half to shut down Preston Stone and win the game, preventing any hope of a classic preventing any hope of a classic Northwestern upset. Um, but this was a good game because we got to see how good Jaden Mayava really is. He had a really productive day throwing the football as well. I was very impressed with that game from USC. All right. Around the rest of the league, Wisconsin upset Washington to win its first Big Ten game of the season. It was their first win since week 2. That was all the way back in early September. So congratulations to the Badgers. They will need 2 more wins. Well, actually 3 more wins if you count this week to get into a bowl game. It starts this week against the Indiana Hoosiers. Their bowl hopes could die as soon as Saturday, but at the very least, they have recently announced that Luke Fickell will remain the head coach of the Wisconsin Badgers next season, which was extremely, extremely controversial. So something to bear in mind as well. And of course, with that being said, too, that Washington, this is obviously a major blow to its college football playoff hopes. It looked like that they could maybe get in at 10-2, now 9-3. They seem to be in a very similar situation as Illinois, which is very, very interesting. And I believe as well that Washington, even if it runs the table, it probably will not make the college football playoff. There were some other scores to go over across the top 25. Let's just go over those really, really quick. As we are sitting here, because there's been a bunch of parity in the top 25 overall. Let's see. Let's make sure we have this correct. All right, there we go. So let's go through this from this past weekend in week number 11. So in the top 25, some other scores to go over. Texas A&M maintains its ranking 38-17 over Missouri. Alabama stays in the college football playoff and SEC title hunt with a 20-9 win over LSU. Georgia dominates Mississippi State 41-21. Ole Miss wins 49-0. Texas Tech handles BYU in Lubbock. The final score there was 20. Let me just double check it. I think it was 28-7, 29-7. It was a good win for Texas Tech. Notre Dame dominates Navy 49-10. Louisville loses a heartbreaker to Cal 29-26 in a wild ACC top half, as the last few weeks have severely indicated. Auburn takes Vanderbilt to the wire, but Vanderbilt survives to win 45-38. Miami blows out Syracuse 38-10, putting Syracuse's bowl hopes to bed for the year as they fell to 3-7. So that was the mark in the top 25. Let's take a look at some of the other top 25 games for this coming Saturday before previewing the 2 big games that I really want to talk about, both involving games within the Big Ten. So to do so, let's take a look at week number 12 in the top 25. We start with some Friday night action. Clemson versus Louisville at Louisville. This is Louisville's season. If Louisville loses this game, their hopes of winning the ACC are more than likely dead, as well as sending a signal to the College Football Playoff Committee that maybe it isn't as good as people thought. Although, for whatever reason, Louisville is still getting disrespected despite a win against the Miami Hurricanes just a couple weeks ago. Oregon hosts Minnesota. Minnesota is already bowl eligible. Can it get to 7 wins? That's going to be easier said than done going to Autzen Stadium on a Friday night. I don't love their chances. We will preview the game that follows this. But Wisconsin plays Indiana. Indiana, obviously, a huge favorite at home. It's still number 2 in the nation. Can Wisconsin pull off 2 upsets in a row as a double-digit underdog? I don't believe so. But crazier things have happened. Maybe Luke Fickell has something up his sleeve that we don't know about. South Carolina's difficult SEC schedule continues with a game against Texas A&M at A&M. The biggest game of the day in terms of college game day standards is Notre Dame at Pittsburgh. Could Pittsburgh keep its ACC title hopes alive? Well, Notre Dame is just looking to keep its college football playoff hopes alive, as anything but 10-2 will more than likely not put them in to the CFP. South Florida is ranked for the first time in the history of the CFP era, taking on Navy at Navy. Can South Florida win this game? That's a very good question. I think they can. Navy is still a good team, obviously fresh off that loss to Notre Dame. Could they pull off some much needed revenge? I'm not so sure, but it should be an interesting game. Arizona taking on Cincinnati at Cincinnati. There's some question marks there as well, especially at the quarterback position for the Bearcats. Maybe Cincinnati isn't as good as what people think either. I'm not so sure. And maybe Arizona's pass defense isn't what we thought it was earlier in the year. Who knows? Oklahoma against Alabama. This is a SEC eliminator game, if I've ever seen one, in Tuscaloosa. Should be a good game. I just think Alabama is a little bit better coached. Miami takes on NC State at home. That's a game Miami should win. Georgia Tech goes to Boston College. And Bill O'Brien obviously had a classic rant on a reporter this past week, which I believe the reporter's question was justified. But if you're Bill O'Brien, you're not, of course, hoping to lose any game. It's just, teams struggle and they need support. And I think that's what his general message was, even though the reporter was asking a very direct question about performance and what they need to do to improve to salvage any hope for the remainder of the year into next year. And O'Brien did not take it that way. All right. Iowa versus USC. Iowa gets very lucky, falls only one spot in the CFP rankings, despite having the same record as Illinois and Tennessee. Make it make sense. They go to USC. I think Iowa's season is over. I think USC trounces them. I think USC's one chance to stay in the mix was this past week, a home game against Oregon, which it nearly won. And then it faltered away. Obviously, a last-second field goal. And, of course, Oregon was able to escape. Iowa City with a win. Virginia goes to Duke. Duke kind of took themselves out of the ACC title race this past week. There is an outside chance they could still win the ACC, but they need a bunch to happen. Tennessee hosts New Mexico State, so anybody who's an Illinois fan rooting for one of these 6-3 teams to lose, you'll probably want Iowa to lose more so than you want Tennessee, because it looks like Tennessee has a bit of an easier matchup, considering that New Mexico State is 3-6 and fighting for its bowl eligibility, which probably won't end up happening anyway because Tennessee, the game is in Knoxville, and I don't see how New Mexico State wins. Can Florida hang around with Ole Miss? That remains to be seen, but I think Ole Miss needs to make a statement. Ole Miss feels like they are good enough to be a top 5 team, and they need to prove it. And you need to go and they need to put a hurting on Florida in order to have any hope to do that. So I really like Ole Miss in that game. A few others to look at: Utah versus Baylor, Texas versus Georgia, and of course, TCU versus BYU. So with that being said, we're going to move on now and talk about some predictions. Of course, before we get started on these predictions, Bando's Breakdowns odds are presented by Novig. We are giving you a 2-pack of college football predictions. So here goes nothing. The big noon kickoff game, number 18 Michigan takes on Northwestern. The over-under is 41.5. The game is at Wrigley Field. Northwestern looking to snap a 2-game losing skid, while Michigan is looking to march on towards a berth in the Big Ten Championship in Indianapolis early next month. Now, here are a few keys to the game that I think Northwestern is going to have to be very wary of. Time of possession is going to be a big key in this game. The longer Michigan's offense is not on the field, the better it is for Northwestern because Michigan's offense is very dynamic. And if you give Michigan and Bryce Underwood space, they're going to make you pay for it. Bryce Underwood is a very athletic quarterback. He can throw and he can run. He's got some great weapons as well. And when that running back room is 100%, they're tough to stop. So the longer Northwestern's offense can stay on the field, the better off they are, and the longer they can sustain drives, which means they're going to have to take risks. Preston Stone is going to have to throw the ball a lot. I think you're going to have to see some trickeration. David Braun's going to have to do some things that he probably hasn't done in several years, even going back to his days as a coordinator. He's going to have to do some things that he doesn't usually do to frustrate this Michigan team, make it interesting, make it ugly. And as long as they can keep it within a field goal to a touchdown, the game is interesting. But I think the line is good where it is. I think Northwestern usually falters in the second half, as we've seen the last two games. I expect the same here. Give me Michigan to cover this number at Wrigley Field and maintain its Big Ten title hopes. And Northwestern, after this week, if my prediction is correct, will still be fighting for bowl eligibility as it only has 5 wins on the year with a couple of games to go. Northwestern's remaining schedule is as follows. They have this game against the Michigan Wolverines. Then they play Minnesota also at Wrigley Field next week. And then they host, or excuse me, not host, then they go to Champaign, play Illinois in the Land of Lincoln Trophy game, a game that Northwestern won 2 years ago in Champaign. They're looking to win the hat back, which would be a major upset against a very good Illinois team. Speaking of Illinois, Illinois gets off the schneid 2 weeks ago, snapped a 2-game losing skid against Rutgers with the dominant win at home, 35-13, fresh off a bye. Brett Bielema is still a very good coach off a bye. He's now 6-2 following a bye at Illinois, and I think they have a chance to win this game. They are, I'm pretty sure it's 10-2 in their last 12 games at home. Maryland is not very good right now, but it does have a very athletic quarterback in Malik Washington, where if you give him space and you give him time, he has a chance to carve you up. The Illinois defense has been suspect at best, but I do think if they can keep Malik Washington contained, force him to go outside the pocket, Illinois will have a chance to win this game and win it going away. I think the number is exactly where it needs to be. I think Illinois is 2 touchdowns in a hook better than Maryland. I would agree with that. I think Luke Altmaier is a much more polished quarterback, and I think all you need is the special teams to come up huge with a couple of key kicks. If you can make those, anything is remotely possible as they try to maintain a fourth quarter lead. So I love Illinois in this game. I think getting to 7-3 is very doable. I went over Northwestern's remaining schedule. Let's go over Illinois'. After this game, they play Wisconsin in Camp Randall. That's a game Illinois should win. There's a chance I might be at that game. That's to be determined. But if I am there, I will be sure to, of course, inform you guys. But that's going to be a very unique atmosphere. Don't know what time the game is as of yet at the time that we are recording this, but I like Illinois in this spot. Then the next game after that is the final regular season game, Illinois versus Northwestern. It'll have a chance to clinch back-to-back 9-win seasons and a chance to go for 10 wins 2 years in a row for the first time in school history. Shouldn't win the bowl game. And for Maryland, they're 4-5, so all they need is 2 wins in its final 3 games. If they can't get it against Illinois, there's a good chance that they could get it in their final 2 as they play Penn State at the end of the year. And of course, Penn State has been awfully struggling right now. So even if Maryland loses this game, there's not much to really hang their heads about because those final 2 games are going to determine whether or not they go to a bowl game. All right, let's talk about some NFL now. The Bears and the Giants. The Bears have an epic comeback in the second half to win the game 24-20. The Giants imploded late, but Caleb Williams showed that he is the quarterback to lead this franchise. That's now multiple game-winning drives for the Bears. I thought the Bears played really well in the second half, and I thought they did some awesome things. I thought they really changed up their strategy defensively. I think they brought a lot more pressure to whoever the Giants quarterback was in that game, regardless of if it was Jackson Dart or Russell Wilson. And also, I do think the Bears did a good job of making sure that they contained themselves all the way through, at least till the end. And they were very smart with their clock management at the end of the game. Could not cover the spread, but still good enough to win the game. The Bears have now won 6 of 7. They are 6-3, and all the momentum couldn't be more up right now as we get closer and closer to Thanksgiving. We're about a couple weeks away. They have a few huge games between then, and the first of the two big games, one in the NFC, one in the AFC, is of course a trip to Minnesota to take on the Vikings. The Bears lost to the Vikings in week number 1 in heartbreaking fashion. After upsetting Detroit a couple weeks ago, Minnesota fell flat at home to the Baltimore Ravens, who just recently returned to Lamar Jackson at quarterback. So it was a very tough loss for Minnesota. But this is a game that the Bears could win and should win overall. I think Minnesota, when they struggle offensively, they really struggle. When JJ McCarthy isn't himself, it shows tremendously. I mean, and it's not even remotely close. When this Vikings offense isn't the same, um, there's nothing more to say other than that they just don't deliver, and they couldn't deliver at the end of the game against the Ravens. They were able to deliver against the Bears, but I think week 1 jitters, the Bears just let the game get away from them. I think if the Bears pounce on Minnesota early, I think they have a chance to do some good things, and I think the Bears have a chance to win the game. So I'm taking the Bears to win, to make it 7 of 8 and make the NFC North race a lot more interesting. Let's go with a final score. Excuse me. Bears 28, Minnesota 2021. How about that? A touchdown game, maybe not at the end of the game, but the Bears hold Minnesota in the fourth quarter to win the game, improve to 7-3, and welcome its old rival Aaron Rodgers, and this time the Pittsburgh Steelers, to Chicago a week from Sunday in a game that I also may be attending as well. So excited to see how that all plays out. All right, let's talk about some UFC now, because we haven't gotten to UFC in this episode yet. UFC Vegas 111 this past Saturday from the Apex. It was the second to last Apex show of the year for the promotion, and it ended with Gabriel Bonfim, a nasty flying knee to Randy Brown to secure yet another dominant win at 170. A huge win for Bonfim, and overall, Randy Brown just did not look good. I thought Randy Brown would win this fight. We spoke about it on Bando's Blitz, which a new edition of that will come out this Saturday morning, like it always does. And we were flat out wrong. We were wrong in the worst way possible. And Bonfim was able to win. But overall, though, a good card in terms of finishes. In terms of predictions, though, 2-10 on this card. Easily the worst card of the entire year for me. Let's try to do a little bit better this week, as we have a huge UFC 322 card to talk about. So let's talk about it. UFC 322 from Madison Square Garden, Saturday night, 2 title fights. The main event of the evening, Jack Della Maddalena defends his UFC welterweight title for the first time of his reign, if you will, after beating Bilal Muhammad in May against the former UFC lightweight champion in Islam Makhachev, who's moving up to 170 pounds to try to win a second title. You can't get a bigger fight in the UFC right now that isn't an aforementioned heavyweight fight that everybody's waiting on, which is Tom Aspinall versus John Jones. We may never get that fight. So here's a good consolation prize. You have a guy in Jack Della Maddalena who's won 18 in a row. You have a guy in Islam Makhachev who's won 15 in a row. This is as high level of a fight and for a main event as you could possibly get. So let's talk about the fights themselves. It's going to be a huge card. Haven't made predictions on Tapology yet. I'm a little nervous too, given that I didn't do so good last week and the week before, trying to salvage the month of November on UFC predictions here. But let me give you the particulars. Madison Square Garden, New York, New York, as per usual. 14 fight card from the Mecca, and it's a big one. So let's talk about some of these fights, starting with the main event, of course, Del Montoya versus Makhachev, 18-2 versus 27-1, as high level of a fight as you could get. Islam Makhachev's last win was a title defense against late replacement Hanato Moicano. So that was not supposed to be the original main event. It was supposed to be Arman Tarzukian, but Arman Tarzukian had back issues, so that fight never occurred. So let's go through these guys' resumes and let's talk about who Islam is beat versus who JDM is beat, because I think it's very impressive. 16-1 in the UFC, has been in the promotion since 2015. For Makachev, if you will. Some notable wins: Dustin Poirier, Alexander Volkanovski on two different occasions, won the title against Charles Oliveira all the way back at UFC 280 in October of 2022. That was a great fight in Abu Dhabi, and that was the coming of age for Islam Makhachev. Everybody knew how good Makhachev was, but until watching that fight, no one really knew how good he could be. Some other notable wins from that stretch: Dan Hooker, this was on his way up towards the title shot. Dan Hooker, Thiago Moises, and Drew Dober are the most notable on that list. But it's clear that this is another legacy fight for Makhachev. If he can beat JDM in devastating fashion, win the welterweight title, the sky is the limit for how good he could be. It really is. I'm excited to see how Makhachev fares in this fight. I think he's very dangerous. I think he can win the fight everywhere, but I see a lot of people picking Jack Belmonaway to win this fight, and I'm not one of them. But let's take a look at Del Montoya's resume just to see how it compares as well, because it's important we do that. It's important we highlight both guys. 18-2 overall as a professional. 67% of his wins were by knockout, 8-0 in the UFC with 4 KO TKO wins. Of course, as I just alluded to, won the title from Bilal Muhammad, has also beaten former title challenger Gilbert Burns and longtime contender Kevin Holland on his way up. And he also has a win over Randy Brown, who obviously, as I just alluded to, just fought this past weekend. So those are some of his notable wins in the UFC so far, but it's clear that this is Del Montoya's biggest fight because it is the biggest name he's ever fought. And of course, Islam Makhachev is pound for pound number one in the world in mixed martial arts at the moment. So it'll be a good fight, but I love Islam Makhachev to get it done, probably in the third or fourth round by submission over ADM. I think if he gets him down to the ground, he'll be too much. And I think if Islam can survive the early storm, because Del Montoya is such a good boxer, I think he will do enough to win the UFC welterweight title and maybe, just maybe, have a rematch in order if the fight is razor close. So let's take a look at the co-main event, UFC Flyweight Championship, the super fight of all super fights in women's MMA, Valentina Shevchenko versus Weili Zhang. 25-4 versus 26-3. They're like heir apparents of one another, but I think this is Valentina's time, man. I really do. I think this is Valentina's time to show that she's the best flyweight in the world. And I think Weili vacating her strawweight title and deciding to do this is a huge step up in competition. Huge fight. To go from 115 to 125 is a big jump in women's MMA. And I just think Valentina's striking, specifically her kickboxing, is going to make the difference. And I think a few weight takedowns, very similarly to the Manon Farrell fight, will be enough to get it done. Some other notable fights on the card: Sean Brady, Michael Morales, Leon Edwards, Carlos Prates, Beneil Dariush, and BSD. This whole card is stacked. Don't miss it. If you've been down on the luck of the UFC the last month or so, this is the card. If you want to get sucked back in, this is a great card to do so. Some high level fights on it. Tune in this Saturday night only on ESPN Plus pay-per-view. All right, one thing that I saw, the Big Ten's private equity deal, I think it's very confusing. I really do. I think it's extremely confusing. I think it's one of those things that you don't really know what you know until it sort of happens. And I think and I think overall though, I just think it's one of those things where, you know, I think it's gonna hurt some schools, and it could help the entire conference itself. But it seems to me like the schools just don't like it overall, and I don't know. It maybe just benefits the conference more than anything else, than more so the institutions that are going to be involved. But I think this is a story to follow as it continues. Let's move on now. Let's move on now to Zan Zinger. I think the AP poll should be thrown out once the college football playoff rankings get implemented. I said it. The college football playoff rankings are what we should be going off of the remainder of the season until the through the end of the year, until they're finally decided. The AP poll does its job the first month, or it should do its job. There's been a lot of criticism this year about this poll compared to other years, but once the CFP is implemented, you should be able to just say, "Hey, look, this is the you know this is what's going on. We have a committee for a reason, and AP voters, you guys were great, but the CFP is what determines who gets in, not the AP poll." Just wanted to get on my soapbox really quickly about that. All right. With that being said, before we wrap up the show, we are going to take a quick break and then eventually throw it to what you guys have been looking forward to, Bando's Breakdowns exclusive with the one and only Iron Michael Chandler. So after we hear a message from our sponsors, we will be right back. And I greatly appreciate your guys' patience. You're going to love this interview. We talk about a lot of stuff, including his RAF wrestling match at the end of the month against Chad Mendez in a match, if you will, from Chicago that I'm excited to be attending at the Wintrust Arena Thanksgiving weekend. So all that and so much more will be on the other side after hearing these messages, and you guys will see Michael Chandler in a matter of minutes. So stay tuned for that. Thanks again for your patience, and once that's over, then we're going to come back and we're going to wrap up another successful edition of Bando's Breakdowns. Again, this has been episode 67. I've been Zain Bando. We will see you on the other side. Have a good one.
Hey fans, Novig is here to change the way you play. Available in 35 states, including California, Texas, Florida, and New York, Novig is America's #1 sports prediction market, and it's 10 times more profitable than traditional sports books because there's no house edge. Instead, you're betting directly against other sports fans just like yourself. Novig is also the only free exchange, which means you keep every dollar you win, whether you're putting plays down on the NFL, the NBA, the NHL, Major League Baseball, college sports, or even UFC and tennis. Novig gives you the power to pick the best odds, or better yet, set your own. Sign up today with the code ETB Network, and you'll get 1,000 Novig coins plus $5 in Novig cash, and special bonus offers like spending $5 and getting $50 back. Novig, where fans play smarter. You must be 21 years or older to play. Please gamble responsibly. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
Just wanted to give a quick timeout in the middle of the show to remind you guys that Bando's Breakdowns is presented by Playback. I teased it a little bit earlier that there was an announcement coming, and sure enough, without further ado, here we go. Presented by Playback, watching sports is more fun with others, but we spend too much of our time watching alone. Playback is a virtual space where communities can stream live sports together with everyone perfectly synced up. Creators can hop on stage, deliver their own play-by-play analysis and commentary, and invite viewers up for Q&A. Playback makes watching sports fully interactive and a social experience. From playing fantasy sports, rubbing your favorite players and teams, and watching with the commentators and communities you care about. Win or lose, sports are best enjoyed together. Join our community by going to playback.tv/ETB Network to find out more, including our live stream schedule. And with that, we can get back to the show. All right, happy to be joined by my next guest. I'm here talking to Michael Chandler. Michael, how are you today?
I'm good, Zain, man. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much for doing this. It's been great to be able to talk to you, and it's cool to see that you have so many exciting things coming up. So, just to kind of start this off here, for you, can you kind of tell me a little bit more about your Form Energy partnership and just kind of what you've been up to with them? You signed with them, I saw in late September. So, can you kind of talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, signed with him in September, but known of the team and the brand for a very very long time, and obviously the association with Anheuser Busch. I'm a St. Louis boy, born and raised. So Anheuser Busch has been a near and dear to my heart since I was born, literally in St. Louis, Missouri. So yeah, man, it's really an awesome dream come true for me. And really, what they're founded on is just doing the work. You know, our the tagline is "We do the work." If you know me, you know my brand. It's like there ain't much flashy about me besides just showing up every single day and working hard and doing the right things that other people aren't willing to do. And now we've got this really cool partnership with Folds of Honor, where we're releasing the cherry slush, Folds of Honor Form Energy cherry slush flavor, where a portion of the proceeds go to Folds of Honor, which is an organization near and dear to my heart that provides educational scholarships for fallen men and women in uniform and first responders. So it's a dream come true, man, and the sky's the limit.
What would you say you like best about the new flavor? Because it seems like just from what I was reading about it, that it seems like the public is going to like it. What do you think of it?
Yeah, they're gonna like it. I got the pleasure of kind of doing a little taste test a couple months ago when we were at the brewery in St. Louis, and yeah, man, it's the cherry slush. Tastes like a delicious cherry slushy. So it's perfect, man. I traditionally my favorite flavor has always been Screaming Freedom, which is delicious. It's got a red, white, and blue American flag on it. But this one is closely becoming my favorite.
It's good to hear. And if you were to say what your favorite flavor is outside of it, what would it be? What would it be and why? Just given that you had just said that that's probably your closest second favorite flavor.
Good question. So I always like to say, so Screaming Freedom, my heart says Screaming Freedom because it's got the really cool American flag on it.
Okay.
But I've got the Grape Smash. The Grape Smash, I think my taste buds might like the best too. So it's kind of like a one and 1A thus far. But it's hard to beat the Screaming Freedom because it's got the cool American flag on it. And you know I love America.
For sure. Anything else you'd like to plug about Forum Energy before I move on to my next question for you?
No, except for the fact that if you there we're in 7-Eleven right now, so you guys can go pick up a case, pick up a couple cans, and a portion of proceeds of every single can goes to benefit Folds of Honor, which is an awesome organization. So
Excellent here. Just kind of moving on. You have some exciting new projects coming up as well, and this one I think stuck out to me as well. I'll actually be in attendance for this. You have an RAF freestyle wrestling match about against Chad Mendez in Chicago. Can you kind of talk about that a little bit? That's coming up at the end of the month.
yep, coming up in the end of the month, just a little over 3 weeks now. I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you as a Bellator world champion, title contender in the UFC, and
Oh
built
yeah.
this beautiful mixed martial arts career had it not been for the sport of wrestling. So excited to get back to my wrestling roots. I was in the wrestling room this morning. There's just something different about putting wrestling shoes on. It just feels, it takes me back to the beginning of the journey. Truly, because you follow the sport. It's glitz and it's glam and it's bright lights and it's this big platform and there's money involved. But back in the day, man, it was just putting on my wrestling shoes and competing against myself, competing against my doubts, competing against the small guy inside of me, and competing against opponents on wrestling matches and trying to become the best version of myself. So there's something beautiful about the sport of wrestling, and Chad Mendes is the perfect opponent. Chad and I have known each other for a long time. He wrestled at Cal Poly, was a runner up, I believe, at 141 or 149 pounds. So I'm excited to go out there and compete, man. Chicago, Illinois, November 29th.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to being there as well, and I'm excited to watch you compete. When was the last time you were in Chicago? It's been a while, right?
Yeah, it sounds crazy because it sounds almost like I don't deserve to be there because I literally have not competed in wrestling since 2009.
That's
Um,
crazy.
but I wrestle all the time. Obviously as a mixed martial artist, I've made wrestling a heavy part of my training week in and week out since 2009. It's just not actually competing with a singlet on and under a specific rule set. So it'll be interesting. I think more than anything, I know how to wrestle, but you've got to wrestle within certain parameters. There's new rules that have changed since I competed last. So there's push outs and there's shot clocks and there's 2 points for a takedown, two points for feet or 4 points for feet to back and all kinds of stuff. So learning the rules, learning how to compete within this rule set, but it's a new challenge. It's another opportunity to become a walk-on again, to become the guy at the lowest guy on the totem pole, to learn kind of not a new sport, but a new rule set within the sport. And I'm excited to go out there and show my skills.
Excellent to hear. Is this going to be a one-off for you, or could we see you doing this stuff a little bit more often moving forward into 2026 and beyond?
It's a good question. I we'll see how this first one goes. I mean, I can tell you this: I love the sport of wrestling. I hate it and love it at the same time because if you know anything about wrestling, it is hard.
Sure is.
It will break you down and beat you down to your knees. So, but I love to compete. So we'll see when the next fight is. What the timeline is on that. Maybe I do wrestle a couple times. Who knows? But we'll get this first one out of the way, see how I like it, and see how I enjoy the competition of it, and go from there.
Yeah, I just kind of turning the transition from the wrestling mat over to the movie set. You it was just recently announced that you're going to be starring in Roadhouse 2. How did this come about? You kind of spoke about it with Ariel, but I'd like to learn a little bit more as to how this came together and how excited you were to star in Roadhouse 2, because that's a pretty major accomplishment, isn't it?
Yeah, man, it's really cool, and I can't even I don't even think I could really put into full context how big the movie is going to be. I mean, the budget is huge. The sets we were on, the cast with Jake Gyllenhaal, Dave Bautista, Peter Sarsgaard, and then obviously myself, Tyron Woodley, Michael Venom Page, Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, like some Dustin Poirier, some really cool, well-known mixed martial artists. It's gonna be really cool, man. But it came about because I actually wrestled with the guy. I wrestled around the same time as a guy named Steve Brown, who's a huge stunt guy in Hollywood.
Okay.
And I actually did a scene with Jake Gyllenhaal in Roadhouse 1. It actually didn't make the movie, but we did a fight scene together. And then since then, Jake and I have struck up a friendship. Steve and I have remained close, and they called me for this one, and I said, "Heck yeah, tell me when to hop on a plane." And now I got a pretty cool character in this movie, so I can't give away any details about it, but I'm not just doing fight scenes, so it's a really cool opportunity. And who knows, man? Maybe I'll do some more movies. We'll see.
Yeah, and they still have to do the production and the promotion for it. Right? So there's still no official date for the release of the movie, correct?
Correct. I think it's definitely going to be the end of 26 or possibly early 27. So we'll see. One thing I've learned that production is very much up in the air. You think you're filming scene 26 today, but actually you end up filming scene 28 and 29 instead. So things constantly change, but it's been an interesting learning curve.
For sure. Just to kind of round it out with the final two questions, because I have to know this. Pretty much everybody's been wanting to ask you about this, but I'm curious for an update. Has the UFC approached you about competing at the White House? Is this something that you like to do? And is Conor McGregor potentially in the cards, given that you guys were unable to finish the story from a couple years ago?
I think Connor's definitely in the cards. That's obviously the fight that I want, the fight that he wants, the fight that makes a ton of sense for the White House card. I haven't been approached about it necessarily. We've had some conversations about it, but as Dana has said publicly, he's not going to make any decisions until January, February of next year. So I think that was part of the reason why I'm taking this wrestling match, staying busy. Just finished a book. We're starting a documentary. We're filming Roadhouse, and we're doing all kinds of really cool stuff. And just like we talked about at the very beginning with my alignment with Form Energy, I do the work. I like to do the work. I like to expand my mind. And obviously as a writer, as a documentarian, as a wrestler, as a fighter, as an actor, as a fitness enthusiast, just doing as much as I possibly can with the gifts that God has given me. So I sure would love it to be June, White House lawn, Chandler versus McGregor main event. We'll see what happens.
Good for you. And I'm just curious. Can you sort of talk about your book and the potential release, and just kind of what went into it? You didn't strike me as someone who likes to tell your personal story, but it's cool you're starting to do that. Can you kind of expand upon that a little bit?
Yeah, no, it's a good insight. I'm really not a talk about myself too much kind of guy, but I just felt like over the past decade and a half of fighting, I've had so many people say, "Hey, man, you need to be on more stages. You need to be on a microphone more. You need to share your story more." Because in my story, I'm not saying it's the perfect blueprint for everybody, but man, there's so many young men around the world they were small guys from small towns who were taught to do small things. And I believe that we were created for so much more. And I never took no for an answer and I kept working. So I wrote a book about my story, but it's partly my story, but it's more about the lessons and principles that I've learned over the last 25 years of hand-to-hand combat. 16 years as a fighter. And I think there's millions of young men out there who will be able to glean information from it to not just inspire and motivate them, but give them somewhat of a blueprint to say, hey, if he can do it, I can do it. And also, this is how I want to do it. He did it the right way. He did it his way. Maybe it wasn't the most popular way. Maybe it wasn't the way to get the most amount of clicks, the most amount of views, the most amount of eyeballs, but he did it, and he could lay his head on the pillow at night knowing that he did it his way. So, not sure when the release will be. It's got a lot to do with the documentary, the movie, the fight at the White House. So we'll get a plan together. But I've got some really great people in my corner, and the book is essentially finished as of today.
Do you have a title for the book yet or not yet?
Not 100% sure, but I think it's, it'd probably be walk on, and not just that I was a walk on at the University of Missouri, lowest guy on the totem pole and turned himself into an All-American, but in the face of adversity, we continue to walk on. No matter what happens to you in your past, your present, your future, no matter what is going on, no matter what adversary, no matter what opponent, you continue to walk on. So that's kind of the ethos of the book, or the overarching theme of the book. So it'll be something about that.
Well, that's going to be awesome. I'm really, really excited to see it at the stands, and I'm sure you did a great job with it. Anything else you'd like to plug before I let you get out of here? Because I know you've been pretty busy as of late.
Yeah, busy is a blessing though, man. No, not nothing in particular, man. Just right now we are doing I don't know if we actually mentioned this, that Form Energy partnered with Folds of Honor, who provides educational scholarships for men and women in uniform, fallen soldiers, first responders, their families. So right now, if you go buy one of these cans at 7-Eleven, a portion of the proceeds of every single can goes to benefit Folds of Honor. It's an organization near and dear to my heart. I love our men and women in uniform and those who have paid the ultimate sacrifice for my freedoms, my liberties, and my ability to live in this free nation of ours. So yeah, pick up the new Folds of Form Energy Folds of Honor Cherry Slush, and have your taste buds do a little dance party.
Good for you, man. Well, that's awesome stuff. And with Veterans Day right around the corner, it couldn't have come at a perfect time. Michael, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. And I will see you at the end of this month in Chicago. It should be fun.
Good, man. I look forward to seeing you there, man. See you at the top.
Have a good one. Thank you so much to Michael Chandler for his time. We talked about a whole lot of stuff. As I alluded to before beginning the interview, he was a great, great subject to talk to. Excited to see all of the fun things that he's been up to. I hope you guys enjoyed that as well. And I hope you guys are getting excited for what could be one of the biggest years in UFC history if he is able to be a part of that all but coveted White House event in June. Should be exciting stuff. All right. That's going to do it, though. There were no errors this week. Thank you so much for tuning in. I really, really appreciate it. We love when we have clean shows. Don't you just love it? We absolutely love it. So, that being said, just one final reminder here, or a few at least. Listen to Bando's Breakdowns wherever you get your podcasts. Would be greatly appreciated. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Acast, and so much more. Of course, as I alluded to earlier in the show, follow the show across social media at Bando's Breakdown. And of course, check us out, youtube.com/ETB Network, where you can find all of our shows, including every episode of Bando's Breakdowns. Keep it locked in for more episodes to come. We will be back with episode 68. But until then, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week, and I hope you have a great weekend. Good luck on predictions if you are tailing me for anything, and I will see you guys very soon for another packed edition of Bando's Breakdowns next week. See you guys soon. Have a good one. Cheers.